Hello viewers, welcome to CC Lectures. Myself Dr. Preeti Jagwani, Assistant Professor from Department of Computer Science, Aryabhat College, University of Delhi. So in our previous lectures we have begin with the topic of amortized analysis, and in amortized analysis we have covered what actually amortized analysis is and in what kind of scenarios this amortized analysis is going to be used, what are the example usage areas of amortized analysis, and what is the difference between amortized analysis and asymptotic analysis. Now in this lecture we are going to cover one particular technique of amortized analysis, and that is aggregate method. So before starting with the aggregate method, let us quickly recap about amortized analysis. So amortized analysis is basically the analysis over the sequence of operation, in which we can say some occasional operations are slow, but most of the other operations are, we can say, pretty okay or faster. And in amortized analysis what we analyze is a sequence of operations and guarantee a worst case average time, and this worst case average time for a sequence of operation is less than the time of a particular expensive operations. Now coming to basically amortized analysis, worst case analysis of a sequence of operation. And why are we doing this? We actually need to obtain a tighter bound on the average cost per operation in that sequence, rather than obtained by analyzing analyzing each and every operation into of that particular sequence separately. So we don't want to analyze, or there is no point in analyzing each operation separately, because there are some of the operations are actually very costly, but they are kind of very less often, while other operations are pretty faster. So we will be taking a complete sequence of operations rather than going with the individual operation analysis. So we have various techniques in order to perform amortized analysis. So there are three main techniques used for amortized analysis. One is aggregate method. In this aggregate method, the total running time for a sequence of operation is analyzed, which is, we can say, the most basic idea behind our amortized analysis. Another method is accounting method. This is also known as banker's method. Here what actually happens is some extra charge on inexpensive operation is being imposed, and that extra charge is going to pay for expensive operations which will come later on in the sequence. So that kind of method, or that method, is known as accounting method or banker's method. Then the next comes the next method is potential method or physicist method. In this potential method, we derive a potential function characterizing the amount of extra work we can do in each step. So that potential is going to give us the amount of extra work which can be done. So the potential can either increase or decrease with each successive operation, but potential can not be negative, can never be negative. So these are three methods of amortized analysis. One is aggregate method, another one is potential method, and the third one is accounting method. Now we will be taking them all in quite greater length of detail. So let us start with aggregate method. So we are very clear that amortized analysis requires a knowledge of which series of operations is possible. So that sequence of operations must be known, and the most commonly the case with data structure which have this this is the most common case with the data structure which are going to persist the state between various operations. and the basic idea here is worst case operation can going to change the state of the data structure in such a way that worst case cannot occur again for a long time, and thus we are actually averaging out or amortizing the cost. So, this is what the basic idea behind amortized analysis is. Now, coming to the first method, which is aggregate method. Let us consider the characteristics of aggregate method. So, aggregate method basically is going to compute the worst case time, which is denoted by Tn for a sequence of n operations. So, let us say we have a sequence of n operations and the worst case time for that sequence of n operation is Tn, and aggregate method is going to calculate this Tn thing. Now, this amortized cost or this analysis is again going to be averaged out per operation by dividing Tn by n. So, the amortized cost will be Tn divided by n per operation. So, this is what we are going to focus on. We will be taking Tn, we will be calculating Tn first, and then for averaging purpose this Tn will be divided by n operations. Now, what are we going to get by this Tn by n? It gives the average performance of each operation in the worst case, and but this method is, we can say, less precise than the other methods of accounting method and potential method, and the reason behind this method being the less precise is all the operations are assigned the same cost. So, all the operations when assigned in the same cost, we can say yes, the method is actually little less precise as compared to accounting and potential method, while in accounting and potential method we will see in upcoming lectures that this is not the case. So, they are, we can say, more precise than this aggregate method. Now, in order to understand this aggregate method, or in order to see that how are we going to determine this total cost for kind of n operations, which is Tn, or which is the worst cost for n operations denoted by Tn, let us consider an array that is going to store arbitrary number of integers, and this is, we can say, these kinds of arrays are very common as array list or vectors in Java. And if you can see, how are we going to implement this array list or vectors? These array list or vectors or some these kind of other data structures are implemented in terms of, we can say, ordinary arrays which are actually non-extensible, and then each add operation is going to insert a new element after all the elements are previously inserted element. So, whenever we are going to get one new element, that new element will be inserted at the new location, and that new location is just after the elements which are previously inserted. But what if we have these arrays, as I have told you, are non-extensible. Non-extensible, we cannot, that means we cannot change the size on the runtime. So, if there are no empty cell left, so one situation comes here, then we need to insert an element and we do not have any cells left here. A new array of double the size of the previous array is allocated and all the data from old array is copied to the corresponding entries in the new array. So, whenever my table is full, I will allocate a new table, and that new table is double the size of the previous table, and all the elements from the old array or the previous array will be copied in the new array. And for instance, let us consider the sequence of insertion starting with an array length of 1. So let us we have array length 1. Now if we want to insert 2, we don't have space. That means, you know, we need to we have, you know, we are in a situation of overflow here, and we need to extend the table, but the table is not extensible. That means we have allocated a new table which is double the size. So the earlier size was 1, now the size is 2. We have inserted the element. After insertion of second element, we are again stuck. If we want to insert in the next item, which is item 3, then we have, you know, table again full. So allocate a new table of the size double. So the earlier size was 2, now the new table will be of size 4. We have inserted item 3, and then we have inserted item 4 in the next cycle. But if we what if we are encountering the situation that we need to insert an element 5. So for the insertion of 5, again we need to allocate a new array, because the old array was of 4 elements and those 4 were are already filled. So now we have, you know, make the new array of the size double, that is 8, and we have copied 1 2 3 4 onto the new array, and we have inserted the new element, which is 5. Then we have the element 6, we have space, we have fine here. Then we have element 7, we have a space here also, fine. Then we have element, let's say 8. So for 8 we have a space also. But the moment we want to insert 9, this is going to trigger another overflow, and this next overflow is going to happen when we want to insert 9, and now the table size is needed. That means we need to allocate a new table of the size double. So the earlier size was 8, and now the table size is going to become 16. So after, you know, having a table of 16 elements, we will be copying 8 elements from the older array, that is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and we will be inserting the element 9 into the new table. So in the sequence of operations, if you can notice what actually is happening, there are two cases. If the space is available, it is being inserted, the element is being inserted. If the space is not available, a new table is being allocated and the elements are being copied. So if we can see the, you know, algorithm of table insert, we can say initially the table array is 0, and we have allocated table as a new size of 1, and if this table is full, we need to double it. So if when this table is full, if number of elements into the table, which is t dot num, is actually equals to the modulus of t dot r, which is equals to the cardinality of t dot arr. Arr is the array. So number of elements in the array is equals to the size of the array. Then my table is full, and then a new array of size 2 into t dot size of 2 into t dot arr. Then we need to migrate all the items from t dot arr to the next new new array, and then after migration of all elements, we will be inserting the new element into the newly allocated array, and then we will be, you know, incrementing the number of elements in the array by 1. So that is a simple procedure here. Now if we come to the analysis of, let's say, you know, n insertion operations, we say that if we can see the table is going to be doubled at second step, third step and fifth step. So till this point, whatever we have shown in the figure, at step number 2, at step number 3 and at step number 5, this table is doubled, and if we can extend this table, we can see that at step number 9 also we have doubled the table. Okay, so table is doubled at second, third, fifth and ninth step, and each insertion is going to take order n time in worst case. So why order n time here? because the elements are being copied from one table to the another table, and there are already n elements, or order of n elements we can say. So my simple analysis says it is going to yield a bound of order n square time for n insertions. So one insertion is going to take order n time, so n insertion is going to take order n square time. But this is actually not a tighter bound because of the simple reason that this extension or doubling of the element is not happening every time. Now in order to understand this fact, let us analyze a sequence of n operations, and we will be using aggregate method for this. Let us consider Ci is going to be the cost of ith insertion, and this Ci is going to be I if I minus 1 is a power of 2, or it is going to be 1. So basically the cost is going to be 1 in the normal scenarios, but if I minus 1 is a power of 2, let's say for example we have 1, then we have 3, then we have 5. All these situations, we have 1, we have 2, we have 3, then at the position 5th we are doubling this. So basically what are we, when are we doubling? When actually I minus 1 is a power of 2, in that particular step we need to double the table size. So for that particular scenario, whenever we are doubling the table size, we can say the cost of ith insertion is not going to be 1, it is going to be I, because we need to migrate other I minus 1 elements from the older table to the newer table. So whenever I minus 1 is a power of 2, wherever we are expanding, so we are expanding at 2, we are expanding at 3, and we are expanding at 5, similarly we are expanding at 9. So for all those cases, it is cost of the ith insertion is going to be I. For other cases, cost of the ith insertion is going to be 1, because the space is available and we just need to insert the element. That is it. So let us consider the size of the table, which is denoted by S of I, and the cost Ci for the let's say first few insertions we can say. So item when I is 1, the size of the table is 1, cost is 1. When I is 2, size of the table is 2, cost is 2. When I is 3, it is 4, size of the table is 4, because that has been doubled now, and the cost of the ith operation, ith insertion is 3, because 2 elements have already been taken from the old array to the new array, and 1 for insertion of the newer element. So we have 1, 2, 3. Then for the 4th element, cost is going to be 1, but for the 5th element, as here we need to double the size from 4 to 8, and the earlier 4 elements will be copied onto the next new array. The total cost will become 5. Now till the insertion of 8th element, we are not doubling the size. So Si is 8, 8, 8 for 5, 6, 7, 8, all the i's, and Ci is going to be 1, 1, 1 for 6, 7, 8. But the moment I is equals to 9, that means let's say we have 9th insertion. So in case of this 9th insertion, we don't have a space, because the size of the table is 8 till this point. So we need to double it. So 8 elements in copying and 1 elements for insertion. So we have the cost as 9, and then we again have cost as 1 till we double the size. So this is the sequence, or this is the pattern which we are which we are encountering here. So we can say yes, Ci is equals to 1 plus di, where di is the cost of doubling the table. So di is I minus 1 if I is a power of 2 and 0 otherwise. So this is what we have seen in general cases in the when we have seen I, Si and Ci also. So we can have Ci is equals to 1 plus di, where di is the cost of doubling the table size. And what are we going to do whenever we sum this over entire sequence? We need to sum this whole thing over the entire sequence. So in order to sum up this thing over entire sequence, we need to take the two terms separately. One term which is going to give me kind of complexity as 1, and another term which is going to give me the complexity of I minus 1. So here we have two separate terms. We can see here this at the screen. So Ci, if you can see at the last row, we can see we have 1, we have 2, 3, then we have 1, we have 5, then 1, 1, 1, then we have 9, and then we have 1. So this cost is actually, we can say, is this cost can be actually captured in terms of two terms or two sequences. One which is going to give me the value of 1 only, another one which is going to give me the values other than 1, which are 2, 3, 5 and 9. And these 2, 3, 5 and 9 are the essentially the sequences or the operations where we are doubling the array. So whenever we are doubling the array, we are not having the cost as 1. Obviously the cost for that particular scenarios when the array has been doubled is different from normal scenarios. So one sequence is of 1s here only, and another sequence is of, let's say, 2, 3, 5 and 9. Now let us try to sum up these two terms. So these two terms we can say is going to be summation of we can say I, where I is less than equals to n and I is less than equals to 1. So I ranges from 1 to n. Ci is one term, and obviously this is going to be less than n because there are not n operations which are resulting in this. There is another category of operations also, and the other category of operations which is, let's say, for j elements or for j times, we can say, and that j is where that cost of 1 is not being encountered. That cost is increased, and that cost is 2 to the power j minus 1. So now we have two terms. One term is Ci summed up over I, all the values of I ranging in between 1 to n. Another term is 2 to the power j minus 1, which is for the scenarios whenever your table has been doubled, and for that particular 2 to the power j minus 1 term, this is going to be summed up over all the j's, and these j's actually kind of lies between 0 to m. Now considering this m, whenever or how many times, or what are these we can say sequences, or wherever we are actually we can say we are taking we are encountering this 2 to the power j minus 1. So this 2 to the power j minus 1 is essentially being encountered every time when my m is log n minus 1. So this is the we can say a derivation which is simply derivable when we say that Ci is equals to 1 plus di, where di is the cost of doubling the table size, and whenever we are doubling the size, we are doubling at the we are doubling at 2, we are doubling at 3, then we are doubling at 5 also, then we are doubling at 9. So every time we are encountering log n minus 1 situation or log n minus 1th step, we are doubling the size of the array. So this size of the array doubling is 2 to the power j, is encountering a cost of 2 to the power j minus 1, but this j is actually ranging from 0 to log of n minus 1. Another term is just a simple Ci, where I is ranging from 1 to n, and this Ci essentially is going to be less than n. So here we can see that both the terms on the right hand side of the inequality are order n. So no terms, whether it is Ci or whether it is 2 to the power j minus 1, will not be greater than order n because of that series in which they are encountering, on which they are landing up. So the total running time of n insertion is going to be order n, and earlier by our simpler analysis we have seen that this running time was coming to order n square. Why? Because we are taking that there are n insertions and every insertion is taking order n time. But here what we have done in this analysis, or in this aggregate method of amortized analysis, we have seen that some of them are costly operations in which we are doubling the array, and some of them are we can say non-costly operations, and we have taken them separately and then we have summed up. So that non-costly operations is actually we can say order n, and summing up 2 to the power j minus term is also coming to order n, because that varies from 0 to log of n minus 1. So ultimately that is also going to be order n. So kind of we can say by looking at the micro level, looking at the each and every operation, or looking at each and every insertion, that whether this insertion is costly enough to be taken as order n or it is not costly, so that it can be taken lesser than order n. So this is the kind of we can say detailed or a micro level analysis which we have done using aggregate method. So in this lecture we have seen, with a quick recap of amortized analysis, we have seen that there are three methods. One is aggregate analysis, another one is accounting method, third one is potential method, and we have seen the characteristics of aggregate analysis or aggregate method, and we have seen that whole aggregate method using by an example of a dynamic table or the array which cannot be extended. So hope you have enjoyed the lecture and got the concept of aggregate technique under amortized analysis. Thank you for a patient hearing.